Ikhwan al-Safa, or the Brethren of Purity, are the anonymous members of a secretive fraternity of learned urbanites that belong to the intellectual history of Islam that were based in Basra. My name is Nader El-Bizri. I'm the general editor of the Epistles of the Brethren of Purity book series that is published by Oxford University Press in association with the Institute of Ismaili Studies. If we look at the proto-encyclopedia of the Epistles or the Rasail of Ikhwan al-Safa, we realize that it is multidisciplinary.
And it's composed, or it is conceived as a work that leads you from one subject to another. So my name is Omar Alí-de-Unzaga, and I work at the Institute of Ismaili Studies.
It is pretty much articulated around 4 principal divisions. The mathematical one starts with a classical corpus that is referred to in the ancient language as quadrivium, and it groups arithmetic, which deals with numbers, geometry, astronomy, and music. And then they move within this mathematical division of their epistles to deal with logic based on commentaries on the Aristotelian corpus as it arrived to them.
And they quote, for instance, the only fragment by Plato's Timaeus known in Arabic language. I am Carmela Baffioni. I am involved in this project since 2008, and I have edited and translated at least 1/3 of the epistles of the Ikhwan al-Safa for this series. That is a very interesting work for me because I've devoted to the Ikhwan al-Safa several decades of my life. And they also report literally passages from the arithmetic books of Euclid or Nicomachus.
And this becomes like a basis for their engagement with physics or natural philosophy. And within that part, which is the second part that deals with physics, they also present us with an enticing fable in which the animals present a court case against the humanity before the king of the jinn. And this is an entry point to understanding also the way they reflect on the relationship between science and religion to become a basis for ethics that reflects as a way of salvation in this world, not only for human beings, but all life forms, and being in resonance with the cosmic order. So in the physics, they talk about the human being as a microcosm, al-insan alam saghir, so the human being is a small cosmos. And then this prepares the grounds for their engagement with psychological disciplines, looking at the faculties of the soul with a particular emphasis on the intellect, which is fundamental in their system because ultimately also they are influenced in their orientations by Neoplatonism. So it is an entry point to understanding divinity, has to pass through reason. And at the same time, the intellect itself reflects an aspect in the cosmos that renders the cosmos a macroanthropon, or a vast human being. Therefore, there is any consciousness or intelligence in the cosmic order. And this is usually referred to as the microcosm-macrocosm analogy.
So this relationship between the human level and the cosmic level is quite a striking feature. And I can easily imagine how people today who are studying, microbiology or stem cells and so on, often wonder about metaphysical questions. And people who study today things like astrophysics, the Big Bang, black holes, often have very philosophical questions. And so the epistles of the Ikhwan al-Safa are a similar kind of understanding of these microcosmic and macrocosmic levels. Yes, produced in the 10th century, but in a sense relevant today.
So in a sense, it is accumulating all the body of knowledge that develops over a century and a half at least, in terms of the assimilation particularly of the Greek corpus into the Arabic language and its expansion into new branches of knowledge.
They are so useful to know what was known about ancient philosophy and science in the 10th century, and their deep spirituality, their faith in the Quran, both in its esoteric and esoteric aspects, can offer occasion of reflection not only to scholars but also for common people. Scholars have divided into two main strands of thought. On the one hand, there are those who try to connect the epistles with Ismailism, and on the other hand, we have all the other scholars who refer them to the most different doctrines and schools due to the richness of approaches contained in the epistles.
Much has been discussed about the identity of the authors, whether or not they were Ismailis, whether or not the content of the epistles is in line or related to teachings of other Ismaili authors. And so that's a question that is still, in the air for scholarship.
And within the Ismaili perspective, there are also different points of view regarding, for instance, the moment to which the epistle may refer, if to the Fatimid rule or immediately before the foundation of the Fatimid Empire in Ifriqiya, or at the Carmatian times, and also the reasons why the epistles were connected to Shiism or Ismailism are different. Someone emphasized their content, referring to an esoteric interpretation of the Quran, the conception of Ali as the true heir of the Prophet, the deprecation of the massacre of Karbala, or the hope that the evil regime in force soon fall and are substituted with the dynasty of the good, whatever we may understand this revolution, or also because of concepts such as the hierarchical order of the universe, the use of symbols like the bee that refers to the imam, or the distinction between elect and the masses, and so on.
The importance of considering both knowledge that comes from philosophical reflection as well as knowledge that comes from revealed scriptures as compatible and as mutually understandable. That allows them to interpret words, concepts, characters that appear in the Quran or even in the Bible as symbols in line with philosophical concepts of their time. The epistles are produced at a time in which there is a lot of interaction between philosophical thought, Sufi ideas, esotericism, and also Shi'i or Ismaili ideas.
On the other hand, we have scholars who have tried to connect the Ikhwan with the Sufism, with the Mu'tazila, even with Ash'ari theology, and others again, like Goodman or Nathan, who emphasize their Ismaili connections.
In a sense, the epistles are a window into the interaction between all of these areas and subjects.
And those who do not share the Ismaili hypothesis usually rely on the testimony of Abu Hayyan al-Tawhidi and the Mu'tazili theologian Abd al-Jabbar al-Hamdani, who lived between the 10th and the 11th century, and who even arrived to name the authors, the possible authors of the epistles, all coming from Basra and linked to the Chancery Secretary Zayd ibn Rifa'a. These people are considered to be Ismailis or Carmatians, And especially Abd al-Jabbar refers to them in connection with the idea that he criticizes that the true Islam will be attained only at the advent of the hidden Imam. In the 19th century, we have also the first edition and German translation of the Epistles by the German scholar Friedrich Dieterizi. And in the 20th century, the most important scholars were interested in the Ikhwan al-Safa, beginning with the founder of Ismaili studies, Vladimir Ivanov, followed by Harry Corbin, Yves Marquet, Alessandro Bausani, and others.
So if we look at the Epistles of the Brethren of Purity book series, which is published by Oxford University Press in association with the Institute of Ismaili Studies, it consists of publishing the Arabic critical edition of the original text based on series of manuscripts that are looked at closely in terms of trying to reconstruct the original text as much as possible. And then it is translated with notes, commentaries that set it in the analytic and historical context to understand its content. And it is divided as much as possible within the sets of epistles that have interconnections between them. And it has engaged the efforts of several highly established, eminent scholars internationally who are experts in Arabic studies, Islamic studies, and in philosophy and classics. And this has been unfolding for many years, and the series started through early conversations about the need to translate Rasail Ikhwan al-Safa to English, but then the project developed into the need to also establish the Arabic text based on a critical edition of the manuscripts, which turned it into a much vaster project that necessitated, rather than just having 4 volumes as a translation, to have a book series that is still continuing to date in terms of completing this endeavor.
And it's also intended to educate audiences, their audiences of their time, of more than 1,000 years ago, into mathematics, natural sciences, and religious sciences, but from a pedagogical perspective.
So the Rasail come as a kind of summation of what all of these disciplines entail, and trying to put them together into a curriculum that ultimately is guided by this kind of bringing together of science and religion to lay down foundations that are ethical for comportment in this life, but also salvation in the thereafter.
So this pedagogical aspect is quite relatable in the sense that today we see education, and we see the process of educating young people as in terms of curriculum.
It is a corpus by its very nature that reflects an openness to all religious traditions, all ethnicities, all scientific and philosophical and sapiential traditions of a historic nature.
I think that we should better speak of mutual understanding of different cultures, if not of acceptation. And I think that the epistles are a deeply religious book, but rooted in the culture of the time, as also Fahar Daftari says. They quote so much from history, from literature, and from other religions. And I think they enter in the epistles all the doctrine in which they recognized a sort of salvific approach.
This is enshrined in the overall picture that emerges from this corpus, that it's not one nation, one religion, one culture that can save the earth and its living beings. It requires an ecumenical approach that brings all nations, all cultures, all traditions in the finest forms that they could offer to safeguard this earth.
You can call it multiculturalism or intellectual pluralism, I think it's something which is very relevant today, but also reflects the world in which the work has been written.